This evening, we're talking about the J1 waiver process and also the 212E rule. What has changed with that rule? Um, what's new? How does it affect you? How did it affect you before? What countries are affected? Things like that. So that's what we're going to be talking about today. But first, let's talk about some meeting protocols. The meeting protocols, please ensure that you join using your first name. Make sure that you mute when not speaking. Use your video when asking questions. So if you want to pose a question, we will have a Q&A section at some point in the presentation, and you'll have an opportunity to ask your questions with the immigration consultant that we have with us this evening. So have your questions ready for that section. So mute your mics. You can mute your video. You don't have to show your video. But if you're going to ask questions during that section, we do expect that you show your video. You have your video open. Raise your hand for speaking and use the raise hand feature. And of course, like I said before, we will have a Q&A section. On the agenda, it seems long, it looks very long, but it's not. It's gonna have us occupied and attentive for an hour. We want to keep it within an hour. If we have more to cover in an hour, more than what we can cover in an hour, what we'll do is we'll have other sessions. We have other sessions lined up that we intend to do in the upcoming year. So a few things that we'll cover today. We're going to look at an overview of the waiver process, what it is, who needs a waiver, the steps in the process, tips from the host, introduction of the host, and introduction of our guest. Our guest will also tell us about the 212E rule, what it entails, how does that affect you based on your country. What are the countries that will benefit, how these countries will benefit, and what remains same, especially for Jamaicans, because most of us who are joining are Jamaicans. Not ruling out the other countries though, because we do have other people in the groups from other countries as well. So our immigration consultant will definitely talk about that. So we'll also talk about how to obtain a waiver, the steps involved in obtaining a waiver, an overview of the fees, the difference between the J1 waiver and what if you are an H1B person, do you need a waiver? Questions like those will be answered during our Q&A section. Just a quick introduction of who we are. So my name is Rochelle Lindsay. Like I said before, I'm a teacher as well, just like you guys. I came up on EPI many years ago and did my transition from Jamaica to here on the J1 program, and then from the J1 to the H1B, and then. So I'm sharing my process, giving my testimony, and sharing the process, and trying to make it easier for other international teachers who you just don't know the process, and you don't know that you don't have that support, and you don't want to just go and ask anybody anything. You want to be able to ask people that you know you can trust, or you know that you know your business out there too much. You just want to just ask a question and keep it moving. Yes, I'm that person. So I've been trying to assist teachers who are here and transitioning, and also teachers who are transitioning from Jamaica to the United States, or from other countries to the US, right? So we're teacher consultants located in various countries. We have teachers from Jamaica. We have Stacy, who is here, a lecturer in Jamaica. We have myself, we have Britt, we have other teachers who are in the group from Kenya. We also have a Canadian group, and we have Guyanese people in here as well. So we have a mixture of teachers from different areas in the world, and that gives us an opportunity to, cultural exchange. And that's what brought us into the United States in the first place. What do we offer? We offer support. So If you're a teacher and you don't know the process, any other process at any point in time, we're here to support you. We have support groups, for example, the international group with international teachers who are just coming to the United States and you don't know how to do your filing, file your tax, or how to do whatever documentations you may need to progress, right? And to progress smoothly. So we kind of assist with those things. We also have international groups for teachers who are not in the United States and you want to know how to get to the United States. We have support groups for that. We actually started with one, and that group is full to capacity. So we had to start another one, and that one is now full to capacity. So we're probably going to have to try to use another platform to, share the experiences and to share, the process and to make the process easier for those who are trying to make it on an international level, right? So we have those groups. We also have an international UK group for teachers who want to go to the UK, and we have some connections there as well. We have a Canadian group as well for teachers who want to get there. And we have a group for summer opportunities, teachers who want to know the legal ways of making money while you're on summer vacation. And, teachers who are coming up from Jamaica who want to know how they can benefit from going on a camp and so on. So we do have a group for that. And we offer support with the resume, a wide range of things: resume, applications, housing, transition, waiver, completion, all of those things. And that's my email. That's our email address right there. So I am not going to go through the waiver process, because that was a long introduction. And I had indicated to our guests that I would sort of give a little overview of what the waiver is all about. But I have full confidence in our guest for today that she will do an excellent job at presenting everything related to the waiver and everything related to the 212E rule, so that she'll feel comfortable moving forward. So these are some of the things I wanted to show you before her presentation, but I am not even going to go in depth with mine. I'll only show you one thing. There's a section on your visa that you should look for when to determine whether or not this 212E rule applies to you. This is the section right here that you will need to look for. And this section we will show you again at the end of the presentation. That's the only thing I'm going to share because I have full confidence in our guest. I'll just go ahead and introduce her to you. Our guest presenter today is Audrey Morrison. She is an immigration, give me 1 second, guys. Trying to assist people who are trying to come in as well. All right, so her name is Audrey Morrison. She is an immigration consultant and the proud owner of Midas Consular Services, LLC, offering non-attorney immigration services throughout the diaspora. She works with individuals and families seeking to petition for their loved ones, as well as green card holders seeking to become United States citizens, in addition to other services around employment, family, humanitarian immigration. Audrey is also an educator for the past 20 years and has taught at various levels in the education sector. Audrey's goal is to empower the immigrant community in finding information to help them make life-changing decisions as they pursue their goals through U.S. immigration. Without further ado, I'm going to welcome Miss Audrey Morrison, our guest today, who's going to tell us about the 212E rule and the waiver protocols and some tips for that. Audrey?
Hi, everyone. Hello, 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 hello. My name is Audrey Morrison Lawson. And of course, Rochelle did a wonderful job of telling you a little about me. So I will be talking a little about myself, but of course, this is not so much about me, it's about you. All right. So without further ado, I am going to all protocols observed, and please, as we move along, anything that is shared here, please presume positive intent. The whole intention and purpose is to empower each other. And my tagline is empowering the immigrant community. So I hope that as we are going along, if you need to grab a pen and paper, then you can, of course, take a moment to do that while I get my presentation all set up and ready to go. So we're going to move forward because we know time is short. So I won't be wasting your time today. We're going to go through as fast as we can. Now, there are a lot of things that can be discussed, but we're going to keep it as close as possible. We're going to cut it at, manage the scope so that we don't go over time. So let me go here. So again, my name is Audrey Morrison. I'm an immigration consultant. And this is just, our fancy term that we use when we want to say we specialize in immigration document preparation and immigration events as well. We also do nonprofit activities as it surrounds immigrants in the diaspora, in the United States pretty much, and also outside of the United States. The name of my business is Midas Consular Services, and we do business as Midas Immigration Services. And my contact information, I do have an office number, which is first, and my personal number, which is second. And of course, if you're saving my personal number, then I do prefer a text message before a phone call, as we have to manage our time. But you can always, I'm very accessible, and you can always reach me one way or another. I'm also encouraging everyone here tonight to take a moment to find Midas Immigration Services on Facebook, on Instagram, also on TikTok before we lose it. And follow me as we talk immigration, all around immigration. So just to add to my introduction, I came from humble beginnings, and this started in Fraser District, St. Anne. And I'm a graduate of Cascade All Age, Albertown High School, Church Teachers College, University, College of the Caribbean, and Florida International University. I wanted to especially list those up because I know that, I might be talking to people who are familiar with me in one way or another. So this is my educational background. And of course, I've been a teacher for over 20 years before launching out in immigration services fully in 2023. So I am still an educator, still actively certified in the state of Florida. And I'm a beneficiary of a family petition and has resided in the United States for 10 years, or this year makes 10 years actually. Now I want to put a disclaimer out there. I'm not an attorney, and this is for informational and educational purposes only. Should you need legal advice, please consult a licensed attorney. A lot of times I get the question, what's the difference between legal advice and information? So the thing is, I cannot tell you what to do. Okay, I can give you as much information as possible. At the end of the day, the decision is yours to make. Now, so back to the meat of the matter. So we're talking about understanding the 212E rule and how it applies to you. So at the end of this presentation, I want you to properly understand what the rule is and how it applies to you. I want you to develop awareness with regards to J1 updates and changes with your immigration status. Understand your visa and waiver protocols for your visa, as well as understand the steps involved in the application process for a J1 waiver. So the 2-year home residency rule, we normally call it. It's the 212 E rule, and this falls under some fancy things like Immigration and Nationality Act, which I won't go into, but in layman terms, it's the US immigration laws. So the 212E rule, it is a provision under US immigration laws that applies to certain J1 visa holders called exchange visitors. And we're going to just talk about that briefly as I go on to the J1 visa. And who does it apply to? It applies to J1 visa holders and their dependents whose exchange programs were funded, fully funded, or partially funded by their home or US government. Those involved in programs that provide training in fields designated as critical needs by their home country. So when we talk about the 212E rule, we're pretty much what we're pretty much trying to understand here is that the United States has a memorandum of understanding with other countries, mostly third world countries. So these countries, they lack a lot of things, such as infrastructure, resources, and they operate below. Economics is not my strong point, but they operate at a very low GDP per capita ratio. So Jamaica fall in one of those lists of poorest countries. And for the benefit of this conversation, I will be making a lot of reference to Jamaica. So for those of you who are not from Jamaica and would like additional information, then of course you can reach out to me for that research as well.
Let me add that if you are in the meeting and you're not Jamaican, just type something in the chat box and I'll see it. All right. Thank you.
And you can forward that to me as well, Rochelle. Thank you.
Yeah.
So let's talk about the recent updates. So last year, I gotta keep saying that. I have to get used to it now. Last year, December 9, 2024, there was a recent update. Now, this is an ongoing update that is done. And if you want to find this information, you can go to the Federal Register, and it will actually give you the whole policy document on the home residency requirement. So last year, this was updated to remove countries. So as the countries progress, they remove them from the list and not subject them to the 2-year rule anymore. So while you are subject to this 2-year home residency requirement rule, and let me just go back and highlight the term. So I wanted to highlight the term physical presence requirement. Physical presence requirement. This means that you have to be there. You have to be there, not contractually, but physically. You have to remain in your country. And the whole point of you remaining in your country is that the time that you spent here in the United States, you would have learned a lot of things. You would have been exposed to a lot of things that are not readily accessible in your home country. So after your time in the US, you would have taken this back and you would have been one of those teachers or super teachers, teacher leaders that impart this information on those who were not able to have the same experience like you did. Now, I highlighted Jamaica because there are some countries who are still subjected to this 2-year rule, which means that after your tenure, you have to go back home, or you have to file a waiver. And we're going to talk more about that later on. So Jamaica is one of those countries that still remain on the list, and you can just take a moment to just look at the countries that are still subjected to the 2-year rule. Other countries are not subjected to the 2-year rule. There has been an update, and one of our countries that we normally work with, Dominican Republic, has recently been removed. So this kind of speaks to certain development that is ongoing in those countries, because once you are above a certain, Jamaica remains, so to be in the lowest category, you have to be like $7,500, $7,500. Between that and a certain amount, like $15,000. Jamaica remains just under $7,500, like 7,400. So they remain in the poorest country categories. They will continue to benefit from the exchange program. However, due to the high migration levels, then of course, they're expecting that people will come here who get this opportunity. They will come here, they will go back home, and they will help to develop their countries.
Right. I think they're trying to prevent brain drain. That's something that I've heard about before, right, Audrey? Where
Absolutely.
you don't want to lose those those people in your from your country that could really be an asset or could really contribute to the development of the country, right? So
Yes.
I think that's why this rule exists, because every if it weren't for this rule, everyone would want to just come and just go, and that's it, no consequence or nothing like that. It's just easy, right?
Course.
So this I want to point out, reiterate what you just said about the 212E rule being an exchange. It's an exchange program. The J1 is an exchange program, and you're expected to go back home after you have exchanged.
Right. So after
So
you have come here,
we're
you brought your
expected.
culture here, you share it,
Yes.
and then of course you're going to be interacting with United States participant. I mean,
Right.
people who are here in the United States, residents, citizens, and you are also going to be interacting, of course, with people from other countries as well.
Right. So you're expected to go home after, but there are ways of going around that, and I'm sure Audrey will tell us.
Yes.
But Audrey, we do have someone from Ghana here. Before you move on to the other part of your presentation, could you tell us, if you know offhand, where Ghana stands with the 212E rule?
So Ghana remains on the list of countries that are still subjected to the rule. And of course, from my immigration experience so far, I have a lot of people who have interacted with from Ghana. Ghana, the migration levels are high. The denial rates for visitors visa, very high also. So that's one of the countries that still remain on the list to date. So this list is revised from time to time. Like after a few years, they will assess the countries again, and they will determine whether to remove certain countries, whether to retain certain countries for this rule. All right, so moving on.
Yep.
Let's talk about waivers. So waivers, a waiver is, I want to put it in layman term first, is what we call a forgiveness letter. So this letter is sent to USCIS or the Department of State, just asking them to forgive something. That's the basic understanding. So an immigration waiver is a legal document that allows an individual to bypass certain grounds of inadmissibility or removability under U.S. immigration law. These waivers are sought when someone is otherwise ineligible to enter or remain in the United States due to a specific legal, medical, or criminal issue. The waiver essentially forgives the inadmissibility and allows a person to move forward with their immigration case. So when we talk about waivers, now in the case of the J1, when we talk about J1 participants are here on an exchange program. They're not here to stay. It falls under the category of a non-immigrant visa, which means that you're here temporarily. So once that period of time, that designated period of time is finished, then you're expected to leave the country and not even stay one day over. Once you're one day over, you have broken immigration laws, which means that you have now put yourself in the category of removability. So once a J1 program is finished, you're expected to leave, but we have what is known as a J1 waiver, which forgives the return or your physical presence requirement and allows you to stay, to change or adjust your case, your status in the United States.
Two things I want to point out, Audrey, before you go to your next slide about the waiver. and the whole J1 program. So you cannot get on the J1 program if you have like a petition for filing where someone is filing for you to become a permanent resident, correct, Audrey?
Absolutely.
Yeah, so if someone is filing for you to come to the United States, let's say a parent or a wife, husband, or whatever the case may be, and you file for a J1 program, you're going to be denied because
Yes.
it's gonna show dual intent. It's gonna show that you want to live here permanently, and the J1 program is not for that. The J1 program is to show that you don't want to live permanently. You just want to come, exchange, teach a little bit, and then go back home. That's what the J1 program is for. So it's not for with the intention of coming permanently. But the
Right.
waiver changes that, and then you're going to tell us about the waiver now, right?
Yes.
Okay.
So the waiver allows you to change your status or adjust your status here in the United States, meaning that you don't have to return to your country. You can stay here and move on to the next process. Now, in a lot of cases, it is not a straightforward process, but if you want to change from a J, what you have stamped in your passport is a J visa. So if you want to change that visa to something else, then you're going to need this waiver. All right. So I hope so far we understand what waivers are and um, the purpose of the waiver so far. Now, understanding your J1, J2 visa. Now, the J1 visa, also known as the exchange visitor visa, is a non-immigrant visa. And I would have said that before, but let's go a little deeper into the purpose of your visa. When you were in college, some of you, or some of us, when we were in college, we did the work and travel program. That is also one of these programs that allow for that is a J1 visa. So it's a J1 visa, and a lot of times when you're going to the embassy, you will hear, tell them you're going for cultural exchange, and that is exactly what it is. You're just going for cultural exchange. Sometimes you're allowed to work. It depends on, sometimes it depends. It's not just for teachers, but we also have a long list of other people who uses J visa. Some are subjected to the rules, some are not. So it's international exchange and cultural understanding between US and other countries, participation in approved exchange programs that focus on education, training, research, or cultural exchange. It facilitates educational and professional development by allowing individuals to study, teach, or gain practical experience in the US. Cultural exchange, promoting mutual understanding and goodwill through immersive cultural experiences. Skill sharing, enabling participants to acquire knowledge in specific fields and share it with their home country upon their return. So let us go into the type of J1 waivers. So we understand the J1 visa, we understand what waivers are. So now we're going to be looking at the different types of waivers. Now, there are 4 categories in which a waiver of the 2-year foreign residency requirement may be granted. And this information is available, of course, at U.S. Department of State. So we have the no objection waiver, and we will be focusing more on the no objection waiver as opposed to the others, because that is the one that is most commonly used by our teachers. Interested U.S. government agency waiver, called the IGA waiver, fear of persecution waiver, exceptional hardship waiver. Now, I'm just going to talk a little bit about the other 3, and then I'll go on to the no objection waiver. So interested U.S. government agency waiver. Let's say an agency of the United States come across you in some way or form, whether it's socially, on the job, at one of these events that they plan for you, they come across you, you have a project that you introduce to someone. We are big on networking events. Like, it's very good for you to get out there and network. And during networking, a lot of times it will not just be about what you do in the classroom, but also you want to create a wholesome picture of who you are. So let's say you go out to a social event and you're talking about a particular project, and this person just happened to be somebody from a government agency who takes an interest in it. Then under this, if they offer you a job, then of course they can provide the reason for you needing a waiver to not go back home for the 2 years. Not very common. It's common, well, not very, very common, but it happens. Now, some teachers are, there are different programs that you come on and you're given a J1 visa. Some teachers will have like the EBI, the Global, the VIF, different set of programs, but there are also some teachers who were brought here on these government agency programs. So they can transition from a J to probably like permanent residence using that waiver. Fear of persecution waiver. Now, the fear of persecution waiver, if something is happening in your home country, there are different categories that these fears fall under. Something is happening in your home country, you cannot return. Pretty much similar to asylum, or I would say almost the same like asylum. The difference is with a fear of persecution waiver, usually it's not within 1 year of you being here. Maybe you have been here for 3 years, 4 years, and something starts happening 4 years later. So you would file a fear of persecution waiver
I
in that
think Brit, I don't want to interrupt. I think Brit had an example of this. Brit, would you
Yes, go
like
ahead.
to?
All right, so like perhaps if you change you're from a country, we're from a Christian country, right? And perhaps you came here and you decided to be a Muslim, just an example. Even though in Jamaica it really wouldn't apply to us just because you have all right to be whatever you want to be. Only way it would apply to us is if you said something like really bad about the government and you feel as though you might be in trouble just for freedom of speech, because in America it's encouraged to say what's on your mind, and perhaps you said something bad about the government and they might get you for that. That could be a reason, because I know somebody from Asia who, they're from China, and China is a country where you can't be anything but what they want you to be. And she got baptized. She's a Christian, and now she don't want to go. She can't go back because of that. So she got that.
So,
And wait, one more thing.
oh, continue.
Just to backtrack a bit, if you are at a school and your school is funded by for Bureau of Indian Education, which is a city, you can reach out to them. You're doing a good job at your school, you can reach out to them and tell them, hey, I'm on the J1 program and I'd like to stay here. Would you be interested in sponsoring me? You can take that initiative. People have done it here at my school, and this is schools on the reservations.
Yes,
So if you are there,
definitely,
then
because they operate under a different system of a law system. So they
Right.
would operate a little different. They have a lot of autonomy with how they spend their money, since they don't really pay taxes to this government. They have a lot of autonomy, so they can make those decisions. Yes. So
Thank you, Brit. Thank
Brit,
you.
for sharing. And you'll have to leave me your address so I can send you something for that wonderful example that you shared. So that fear of persecution that you speak of would have fallen in what we call fear of persecution under religion. So there are certain categories that your fear of persecution must fall under, and it includes race. In Jamaica, we don't really have a race issue. It includes religion. So we're typically a Christian community. So should you move on to another religion and you think that this will cost you your life, then yes. And then we also have political opinion, nationality, and membership in particular social group. So like I said before, similar to asylum, but we can talk about that at a different time. And we have exceptional hardship waiver. Now, the exceptional hardship waiver in a lot of cases will be like for the dependents. The dependents would file a exceptional hardship waiver. And when dependents want to file separately from the primary beneficiary, which is a J1 holder, they have to use the exceptional hardship, like somebody died, or somebody is very sick, you fall very, very ill, and then you can go off and probably file that waiver on your own as a dependent. All right, so like I said, we're going to continue with our no objection waiver.
Before you go on to the next slide, I think Brent has a question or wants to add something before you move on.
Yes.
Yeah, I just want to add to the exceptional hardship waiver. For example, if somebody feel as though they might not, can you hear me right?
I can hear you, yes.
If they feel as though they might not be able to qualify for the no objection for whatever reason, which you'll share later, they can use exceptional hardship. If they, for example, have a baby here, they have a U.S. citizen child, they can, once they can prove that, life is going to be tough when they go back home with that U.S. citizen child, then they can use that. Because, for example, the Filipinos here, they never get a no objection. So that's what they use, exceptional hardship. They come here and have an anchor baby and then use that baby to stay here.
Thank you for that.
It
Thank you for that knowledge of a Brit.
Because no, you see, it depends. So that depends, and it, even if they're gonna use exceptional hardship, it's almost like it's gonna come back around to the fear of persecution waiver, because in most cases, even if you have a U.S. citizen child, they will tell you, even if you have a child that is sick, they will tell you, take the child and go home. In most cases. So so all cases are different. So it depends on the needs, the individual's needs. So it's not a general thing, but it depends on individual needs. All right, so.
Yes, you can go ahead. You can continue. Thank you for that.
All right, we're good. We're good and we're following.
Yes,
all right, so let's talk about eligibility. Nice, love it. Now, eligibility for a J1 waiver. The applicant must not be subject to government-imposed restrictions. So government-imposed restriction includes government scholarships, bonds, student loans, and being a guarantor. So a lot of government scholarships come with a bond. Now they're not going to tell you you cannot leave right away, right? They're not going to tell you, but don't think they're not going to find out eventually. For one, if you have a bond, you're not supposed to tell a lie on any immigration form. That can just dash your whole hopes of ever being in the US to the ground. So government scholarship, you have to share that information. If you have a government scholarship with a bond that has not yet been served, you should not take up a J1 position. You should not apply for a J1 visa. So government scholarship, bonds, student loans, being a guarantor. Now I want to zoom in on being a guarantor a little bit, because a lot of times we have family and friends who, they want to achieve their goals. You want the best for them. It's nothing to, of course, take your salary, prove that you're working and you can afford to pay, and sign off on that form so that they can achieve their dreams as well. However, being a guarantor does not prevent you from having a J1 visa, but it can prevent you from getting a no objection waiver. Remember, the no objection meaning that this letter of forgiveness is going to say, we don't have any problem in the individual staying in the US. She can go, she doesn't have to come back and share what she has learned. She can go and live her best life. So being a guarantor, we have had situations where people come to file J1 waivers, and then that is when they remember that they had signed many, many, many years ago guarantor for someone. This is a time that they're also realizing that there's also $1 million in loan outstanding. So you want to make sure that if you had ever even thought of it, double check that you're in the clear. If you had ever been a guarantor, make sure that you have proof that this loan has been cleared and you're no longer required to be a guarantor. This can prevent you filing, being successful at a J1 waiver.
All right,
So,
before you go on, before
yes.
I forget, I do have a question for you in regards to the bond and, you know, what would prevent you from getting a waiver. So I want to be clear on that, and I want everyone to be clear on that as well. So what if I have a loan at Scotia NCB? Scotia NCB loan,
Mhm.
that won't affect anything, right?
Okay, so
Government agencies we're talking about, right?
right. So a loan at Scotia or NCB is not a government loan. It's a personal loan. However, you still have to be careful with those loans because you have to make sure that you're in good standing. Now, even though it is not a part of the eligibility per se, however, USCIS, and we're going to come to that later on, USCIS is responsible for the ultimate decision. And being of good moral character is one of the things that whatever form you're filing with USCIS, they're going to be looking at that.
Thank you
So
for
you
that.
have to be financially responsible. So continuing. So let's start the application process. So I did mention USCIS and I did mention Department of State. Those are the two agencies that are responsible for this petition, this application. Department of State is responsible for all embassies. We call them consulates. And USCIS, of course, is going to be responsible for anything that goes on inside the United States. Processing time, generally 90 to 120 days. That's 3 months to 4 months. That's the general rule. However, what we have seen is more like 7 months, 9 months. We have had even as long as 1 year.
I have to give my testimony.
Yes.
So when I did my waiver, I did mine in October. In the October, that's where I started everything. And I didn't get through them. Boy, they make me sweat. They make me sweat, man. Oh my God, they make me sweat. Right. I didn't get mine until May, June, beginning of June, around that time. So roughly around 7 months. And I know of people who it took longer.
Mm-hmm.
And I know of people who I sat there with them and applied at the same time. We used the same post office.
Mm-hmm.
Everything was the same. Well, not the same. We're different people. But
Right.
we did it at the same time. And theirs was processed long before mine.
Yes.
So I've witnessed
Yes.
that. So
Yes.
it varies. It really varies.
And that's right across the board. Right across the board. And I'm glad you said that because a lot of times you have somebody, they send in an application and they're like, all right, it's 90 days now. And they start calling you every day from that 90 day to that 120 days. So it's important for you to meet that boy or that girl named Patience because that person is going to be your best friend. So when it comes to any process with USCIS, once it's out of our hands and it's in their hands, Patience will be your best friend. So fees, a total of $190 in fees. It's 3 separate money orders. There's application fee, consulate fee, and there are some other little fees involved. So all of that will come up to $190. Steps in the application process. Once you apply for a change of status to another type through U.S. Department of State, you are then referred to your government representative office in the United States to provide proof that the government of your home country has no objection to you changing your status and remaining in the United States at the end of your J visa. You apply via the consular office that has jurisdiction for the state. So in most cases, it's like 2 parts to your application. One is going to Washington, D.C., and the other part is going to go to your consular, your consulate. The consulate sends.
The Jamaican consulate is where? Just for
So,
those who
so there are
um,
two consulates that we have currently. One is in Miami, one is in New York. Now, when you're doing those J1 waivers, it's very important that you make sure that you have the correct address and you also are filing based on the state that you're in. So whether you will send to Miami or New York will depend on where you are, what state you are working in.
I want to point out something as well, just in case we don't get a chance, just in case I forget, right? Because
Right.
having gone through the process myself and having gone through it with other clients that I've helped to go through the process, you can't miss anything on these documents. One mistake, one document short of something, one error, and they're going to send it back to you and it's going to delay you. And then if it's delayed, what happens is you get out of status.
You
By
may
the
miss out
time-
on important opportunities as well.
Yes, you miss out on important opportunities and you get out of status. And then even so, some people have gone back home to Jamaica or to wherever they were
Yes.
because timing is important when you deal with these documents, and when you deal with this waiver, it's very important. So timing, if you don't have any time to make any errors or to miss out on any documents when you're doing this. Just wanted to point that out, Audrey.
Yes, and thanks for sharing that, Rochelle, because you don't want these kinds of delays, especially when it comes to you just dotting all I's and crossing all T's. Like,
absolutely,
they are looking for you to mess up. Like, when it comes to applications, all of them are fraudulent until you prove that they're real and you have a genuine need for this. So when it comes, it's almost like they are trained to look for these mistakes. Like, you don't even go through your application before. You know, they look for things like, okay, common mistakes, that, and they look for these things. So you want to make sure that when you're doing these filings, if you're doing them or whoever is doing them for you, they're paying close attention to what they're putting on these forms.
Another example before you move forward is just by paying the wrong amount. If they say pay 120 and you pay 119.0 something, I mean, that's major as well. So just be careful with every single thing that you do in the process.
Right. So once the fees are incorrect, I mean, if you send more, they'll probably take it, but you're not going to get anything back. But once, you have to make sure that those fees are accurate as well. So another step is the consulate send your application to the government office in Jamaica, which handles these applications. So the Ministry of Finance and Public Service for processing and necessary follow-ups. So I want to zoom in on the follow-up and processing section. So you might be thinking, okay, I was a guarantor. How are they gonna know? They're gonna know. I had a bond. How are they gonna know? This is where this comes in. This follow-up is actually an investigation. So they're going to be digging into your background, your finance background, public service, whatever it is. If they find anything that brings up a red flag, just know that's the end of your application process. They are not going to give any go ahead for you to get that no objection letter. The consulate receives approval from Ministry of Finance and Public Service for the letter of no objection to be issued. The consulate notifies the approval to Jamaica Consulate, that's in Washington, D.C., and they inform you of the approval. So they get the no objection letter. You won't see that no objection letter. You're going to get another letter to say that we have received it. You're good to go. And in some cases, you may not receive it too, but they will, of course, you can track to see exactly where you are. Once you receive a favorable recommendation, that will be, you will be able to access that information. Application process continued. The Embassy of Jamaica issues the letter. Department of State via diplomatic note. It's like an email stating that there's no objection to you staying in the United States. Department of Homeland Security, that's under USCIS. They receive your letter of no objection. They grant you the waiver. You are now good to go. So let us talk about tips. And I'm going to piggyback off what Rochelle said earlier. I'm going to throw that in there because I don't think I have that written down here. You want to pay close attention to what you put on those forms. Any mistake can cost you your money, your time, and even most importantly, delay your case. So you would miss out on opportunities and the inability to do anything, go anywhere. You just have to finish your program and go home in some of those cases.
I have another
So-
example,
Mhm.
Audrey. Just a client is actually talking to me on WhatsApp and reminding me of a time when her documents were sent back because of a simple address, how the letter was addressed. It was
Mhm.
addressed to the embassy and it should have been addressed to the MOF. A
Mhm.
simple thing like that
Right.
should not have bothered anybody, right? But it
Yes.
did, and the letter was sent back, and it was a delay, right? So we
Yes.
don't want to have those things happen.
So when I just started doing J1 waivers, there were things happening like that. So when we were talking about the waivers, we heard about all of those things happening, especially with the letters, even with like money orders. We have to make sure that the right thing is written on the money orders or they can be returned. So, and that is one of the reasons why we handle the process. We don't really, it's not like we go back and forth, we handle the process. So we ensure that there is some amount of quality checks, we will call them.
The money order was a big thing too, especially if you live in a small town, because I could not get an international money order because of where I live. It just didn't sell here. And so I tried to ask somebody elsewhere to buy it, but then that wouldn't work because it would have had to come from me. So I had was to call the embassy, and then they allowed me to do the domestic money order to the embassy, and then they to the consulate here, and then they would have just paid Jamaica for me just because of where I live. And I had to
Wow.
That is
communicate
always
that
a
to an
major issue.
exception.
That is always a major issue. The money
Yes,
order,
yes,
because the
yes.
money order is not a regular money order that you
Mhm.
get. You go into the supermarket and you go ask for a money order,
No,
whatever, pay whatever. It's not a regular one. It's an international
it's an
money
international because,
order,
of
right?
course, remember
Right.
that
So
consulate
it's
is now
not
involved,
not
right?
all agencies or companies or areas will have that service, right? So just be mindful of that.
Right. So we make sure that we get the money orders, and in a lot of cases, we might mail them to you just for your signature. Just for your signature, nothing else. Don't start writing everything all over the money order. We're gonna have to do it again. So we will get the money orders, we send them to you just for your signature. We make sure we put the return envelope in. So all you're doing, signing and mailing back. All right, so continuing on tips, you must present your DS 2019 with other supporting documents for your J1 waiver. Very importantly, your DS 2019, you should be keeping that wherever you keep your passport. That's how you should guard that document.
As a
Make
matter of fact,
sure,
I want to make a point out the DS 2019 is your document or your passport. It is your passport now.
right,
Yes. So if you're
right.
a first year teacher, second, and you've never traveled, whenever you travel and you're returning to the United States, that document, without that document, you're not going to be able to have a peaceful life.
Right,
Right? So
absolutely.
you need that document for
So,
everything that you do,
yes.
every major movements.
And
So
to
I
add, it
wanted
does.
to, yes, go ahead.
I was gonna say, to add, it does supersede the visa in the passport, just because, like, if you're extending your visa, right, your J1, and you're gonna be in your fourth and fifth year, your visa might be expired because the initial visa will only be issued for 3 years. And when you extend, you get a new DS for the additional 2 years. And then
Mhm.
you can use that to, exit, but then you would need to apply for a visa to return. So
Right.
the DS is very important.
Very, very important. So I just wanted to, outside of other documents that we would have asked you for. We're just reminding you, keep it safe, keep your passport safe, keep everything that's personal safe, and everything that you will need for these applications. Check for recent updates prior to applying for J1 waiver. So the information changes from time to time. Like I said, there are changes to the Federal Register. This information is put out there. You want to be aware of what's going on in the space. Do not wait to apply for your waiver. I'm going to go more into this one. I'm going to just jump over it and move on. Notarize copies of your documents. Keep a copy of any document that you send for your records. Use efficient mailing options such as certified mail, express mail, overnight mail. And double check addresses, as waiver division mail may not be forwarded. So even with your addresses, don't leave off your apartment numbers, nothing that that you're gonna, your entire address. Just make sure that you don't leave anything out, because you may not receive your documents on time. Now, pay close attention to extension timelines and apply accordingly. So back to that point that I said I would have talked a little more about, pay close attention to extension timelines. Now, once you receive a favorable recommendation, you cannot get another extension. So your extension, once you have that final extension, that is the best time to apply for your J1 waiver. So once you put in that last extension that you're eligible for, get on top of your waiver right away. Don't hesitate. Don't wait. Just put it in. Like we said, they say 3 to 6 months. It can be as much as a year in some
Mine
cases.
took 7 months. I'm telling
Right.
you guys. And
7
I know
months,
people
6
who had
months,
to go
9
home because
Mhm.
even after 12 months, they didn't get it because there were issues here and there.
Right.
Everybody's case and
Mhm.
everybody's situation is different. And I'm
different.
sure Audrey will expand on that.
Right. So each case is like a fingerprint. There's no two cases that are the exact same thing, pretty much beginning with you being a different individual. So every case is situational, and you want to make sure that you act accordingly. And your last point, most importantly, if you can unmute your mic,
I want to do
you
it
can
too.
read that one
We can all
out
do
loud
it.
for me.
We can all do it. This
Yes.
second point.
You can go ahead and unmute your mic so you can read that one for me. All right, very good. Thank you very much. No, your coworker is not your friend. Whatever you're doing when it comes to J1 waivers, it's your business. Keep it right there. It's your business. All right, so that's for that point.
Yeah, I want to elaborate on that point.
Yes, go ahead.
Please be discreet, because I know of cases where teachers have been sent home because the waiver came too soon. The waiver came too soon, and they were in the middle of the school year. And because they were in the middle of the school year and the waiver come and they didn't plan for the transition, they had to end up going home and just starting over the process all over again, or starting the application process all over again, and having a harder time transitioning, right? So this has to be well-timed.
Yes,
well-timed. You have to know, you have to do it at the right time where your time yourself, you give yourself 6-7 months to get back your documents, depending on where you are applying from. And then also you have to be quiet about it.
Definitely.
Just ask me for help, and then I'm not gonna remember tomorrow morning who you are. I'm not gonna remember. I'm gonna remember because I'm gonna save your number. But just ask for help and keep it moving. Don't tell too many people what you're doing.
Yes.
Right?
Yes, definitely. So at this time, I'm going to be taking some of the questions and answers. We did have a few questions that came in, and I did just add them to our next slide. So I'm going to be going on to our questions that were received prior to the presentation. Now, what are the grounds for requesting a J1 waiver? I think I'm going to throw that out to someone who can unmute their mics and tell me what are the grounds for requesting a J1 waiver?
No objection.
Absolutely.
Fair
Very,
prosecution.
very good.
I'm seeing the 4, but I just can't remember the 4. I'm just
So there's a no objection. There is the IGA waiver.
mhm.
There is fear of persecution and extreme hardship.
I knew it was 4, but yeah, thank you.
How do you apply for a J1 waiver? So you're gonna, of course, first send, do your applications, send to Department of State, send to your consulate. And of course, that's where you begin. And then, of course, the rest of the process is pretty much, communication and checking and monitoring and all of that. Can I apply for a H-1B visa while my J1 waiver is pending? Yes, and it goes right back to your timelines. You have to make sure you are aware of your timelines. If you file a J1 waiver, you can't do it at the last minute. You cannot do it at the last minute. Remember, we talked about what can happen, delays happen. You can have different things just holding up the process. USCIS just being USCIS. And if that happens and you don't have that waiver in hand before you transition to a H-1B, you can get the offer, but you just can't move forward without the waiver in hand. So you can apply, you can get the offer, but they're going to need the waiver. What happens after receiving a J1 waiver? You will go ahead, you will arm yourself with information, and then, be prepared to live your best life, achieve your goals, whatever the case is. Is there a way?
Hold on, before you move on, Audrey, sorry.
Yes.
Just those 2 last ones that you did. Can I apply for H-1B while my J1 waiver is pending? When I was switching from J1 to H-1B, I'm a testimonial. When I was switching, I got my job offer before my waiver came in my hand. I knew where I was going to work. I was going to change schools, of course, because the school that I was at was not offering H-1B. So I was going to change schools. Luckily, the school was just nearby, so I didn't have to move. But I had my job offer before I had my waiver in my hand. So it's possible to apply first to jobs while you wait for your waiver.
Definitely.
Okay?
And
please
also,
do it that way.
Yes. And also, I wanted to mention that the J1 waiver allows you to change or adjust status. I think I said it before, but just to reiterate, the J1 waiver. So moving from a J1 to a H-1B is actually a change of status. Not an adjustment of status, but a change of status, because the H-1B is also another non-immigrant visa. So you're changing status. When you're moving from one non-immigrant visa to another non-immigrant visa, that's a change of status. But if you're moving from a non-immigrant to an immigrant visa, meaning that you're moving to a green card, then that's an adjustment of status.
Question. Isn't H-1B a dual intent visa?
Not necessarily. Not necessarily. It's still a temporary visa. However, employers who hire you through H-1B, they can apply for adjustment of status. So you can move from your H-1B, you can do an adjustment of status from your H-1B to a green card via one of the employment-based options. So those options, of course, in the near future, we should have another session where we talk more about those options.
Definitely. But yes, you're able to move from the J1 to the H-1B. The J1 will not get you to a green card. Audrey, I'm just breaking it down so that people can understand, like break it down.
Right. So it's
the
not
J1 will not get you a green card. I want to break it down simple for you, right? The H-1B though, Audrey.
Yes.
Correct me if I'm wrong. The H-1B does lead to a green card. It does lead to that because your sponsor can put in a petition for you.
So with the H-1B, The H-1B is a non-immigrant visa. However, all right, most employment-based options, we call them EBs. So the EBs, most of those options require a job offer. Now, these employers, they must have gone to like Department of Labor, which is another agency, and they're going to prove to Department of Labor that they need you. Once they get the go-ahead from Department of Labor, then they can put a petition in to say that, okay, we are now adjusting your status. So when you were moving from the J1, if you move from a J1 to a H1B, that's a change. J1 to a F, that's a change. J1 to anything else that is non-immigrant, that's a change of status. But once they go to the EB options, then it's an adjustment of status. They put this petition for you and you can stay here and apply for your green card. All right, so I hope that.
Thank you for clarifying that. Thank you.
Yes. So they will put that in. I don't deal with anything H, neither the H1 nor the H2, because the employer, it is initiated by the employer normally for the H's.
But if you need guidance, I deal with age. So if you need guidance on the age, switching from the J1 to the H1, and if you can, I see a question there on the H1. We're gonna have other sessions, of course, you know, to guide you on the transitions and the different ways and so on. I'm gonna let Audrey finish, and then we'll take a few questions from the chat. Go ahead, Audrey.
All right. So is there a way we can apply for a waiver and conceal the process and approval from program sponsor? Now, let's go back to our tips for applying for a J1 waiver. You remember that last one? What was it? Okay. All right. So if you don't tell them, they won't know. You will be assigned a case number, and that will be yours, not theirs. Which is the best or most favorable time to apply for a waiver during our tenure? We did discuss that. You know, watch out for those timelines. Is it true that if you use a lawyer for a waiver, they have to inform your program? Just a reminder that your lawyer is your employee. They can give you advice, but you are the one who ultimately employed them. You tell them what to do. If I marry someone, will I still need a waiver to change my status? Yes. Marrying someone, you will be doing an adjustment of status, and you will need a waiver to help you to adjust. Can I apply directly for a work permit after I get a waiver? If so, how? So you cannot directly apply for a work permit after you get a J1 waiver. And that is because a work permit accompanies a petition. So if you're doing an adjustment of status, you may apply for a work permit. If not, then you will not be able to apply for a work permit. Your non-immigrant H1, J1, those visas allows you to work. That's your authoritative figure right there. So you don't need a work permit. Once you're moving away from those and you're doing any form of other petitions, whether it's a work petition or a family petition, then you can apply for a work permit. So that brings me to the end of our Q&A. And if you have other questions out there, I hope that we'll have a parking lot or somewhere where we can throw those questions, Rochelle. Yes. And I can answer them.
I'm going to ask you, first of all, thank you, Audrey, for your presentation.
Thank you.
It was very, very informative. I learned a lot from it. I've gone through the process myself, but I've learned a lot from your presentation. Could you go back to your Q&R questions, please? And while she's doing that, if you have any questions at all for Audrey, we won't be able to answer all. But we will compile them, and if you're in the group, we will share.
Yes,
we'll share tips. You hear me? We'll share tips and so on in the group chat, the WhatsApp group chat. Right. Two things I wanted to point out that Audrey mentioned while Britt gets ready to find us about 2 or 3 questions from the chat. Two things I wanted to point out. One, even if you're going to get married to a US citizen, you need a waiver.
You do.
Even if you're going to go to school, like you say, oh God, I can't be bothered with these kids, I'm just tired of this. I'm just gonna go to school.
Yeah.
You still need
Still do.
a waiver.
Yeah.
Whatever transition you're going to make from the J to anything else outside there in the US, you will need a waiver.
You need a waiver.
One way you don't need a waiver if you plan to go back home and stay the 2 years, right, Miss Audrey? You
Absolutely.
plan to go back home and stay the 2 years.
Absolutely.
You don't have to be bothered with all this.
Yes. That's
Right?
correct.
But if your intention is, and come here, we never come here if you go, we did not come here to to go back,
Mhm.
right? So if your intention is to, stay, then of course you're gonna need a waiver. Brit, two or three questions from the chat.
And your intention is really cultural exchange, but as you start looking in, looking out, looking even better, you're gonna, change is the only constant. So of course you're gonna look for something to change to. So yes.
One of the questions, how do I know that my program is sponsored by the US government or not?
It depends on the what do you call them? It depends on the company. So you can read up on the company that. So when you go to those links, I know Rochelle shared
Are
them.
you talking about the different J1 programs you're talking about?
Different J1 programs. So you can look up those companies and see if they're privately owned, if they're government owned. If they're government owned,
it should be on the website. It should be on the website, right?
It should tell you. Yes.
Okay.
The easiest way
with what was it, Brit?
Brit,
yeah. I was saying one of the
easy said the Indian reservation, those are Native Americans. If you work for the Native Americans, your opportunities are endless.
True.
Yeah.
Okay.
I was just gonna say though, a way to really determine if the program is sponsored by the government or not, if you did not pay any money to come here on your J1 program, definitely it is, because I had to pay money out of my pocket to come here. I didn't get an opportunity to come with like an EPI or a TPG where it was free. All I had to find was visa and plane fare. I had to pay my visa sponsor their program fee. It was when I got here on the reservation, my employer said, "Oh no, you shouldn't. We'll pay for you." So it wasn't the program itself that paid. My employer gave me the money in my pocket and told me you can pay them. So and
when
because
I
of
was
that,
coming, I have to share mine too, because when I was coming, I didn't pay anything.
Mm-hmm.
I just saw my ticket came for me. They put me up in a hotel. They
nice.
carry me to a car mart and say pick a car, and they do all kind of nice things for me. So that means what does that mean, Audrey? That's what type of that company is what?
Well,
EPI.
I cannot say. I don't know really, but some of these programs, they're fully funded and some are partially funded. So it depends on the funding that they receive. Some of these programs are privately owned and they receive grants. And there are some programs that may be publicly owned and they operate like as a nonprofit and they are fully funded by the US government. However, I am not 100% sure how to distinguish if your program is government owned or privately owned.
That's something I'll look into because I don't know either, and I'm not going to pretend like I know because I really don't know. But now that I'm hearing of this is something I'm going to look into and perhaps post it in the group too, so that those teachers who are choosing a program will kind of be swayed, decide, well, maybe this is one because
And a lot of times too, you will find that there are some programs that are government owned, but you cannot really find direct links to the government pages because they probably fall under like a government owned nonprofit. So you can research it and then you can share it and let us know.
I can tell you two programs where I know that they are
Mhm.
not government funded and they actually encourage you to apply for a waiver. Intrax, which
Mhm.
was prior, they were called I forgot what they were called before, but they're not Intrax. And GAC, I think. GEC, Global Education Concept. So they encourage you to, apply. I can give a story here. When the Filipinos they apply for their waiver because they don't get no objection, it's not easy for them. There's
Mhm.
always a period where they end up being out of status before they become in status. Like they would work until, let's say, from August to October without
Mhm.
having any visa. The school no, they didn't employ them without having a work permit or anything. So they had beef. A group of them had beef. So they called the visa sponsor Intrax and say, hey, why did this person didn't go home after 5 years? They were still here working and they didn't get a waiver. You know
Mhm.
what? No, you know what Intrax told them? They said that's their business and then they can go call USCIS themselves. They reported it to USCIS and nothing happened. That said person is still here. So I know that Intrax will not. I applied for my first year. Intrax is aware. They didn't say, oh, you better go home or anything like that. So like
Wow.
some sponsors will tell you, yeah,
Mhm.
right. GEC and Intrax for sure.
But
Oh,
guys, different strokes for
Different
for
different
different folks.
strokes.
Absolutely.
Listen, let me tell you, like I said to you before, I sat with a group of us, a group of ladies of us, same room. We sent it off to the same post office, same everything. And then I didn't get back mine until 7 months after I sweat and sweat. But they got back theirs in 4 months. 5 months. It varies. Everyone's situation is different, and there may
Different.
be a one or two thing that we don't know all the details of that pushes someone forward or delays the
Or
process.
hold them back.
Yes.
Yes.
So I'm gonna let Audrey wait, one more question from the chat, and then I'm gonna let Audrey share her contacts
All
and
right.
anything
So
else, her final words.
pretty much some of the I honestly think they would require a personal, consultation, case by case situation. But a question that we is this one. They're asking if they're up to date with if their guarantee payment is updated. Payment is current. Can they still apply for a waiver?
No. You
Okay.
have to be like totally cleared from that loan. You have to remove yourself from the loan totally. And if you're having trouble, they have to replace the guarantor. So they won't let you go until they have another guarantor to replace you.
I have a story because I was a guarantor.
Mm-hmm.
And so I have a good testimonial right here. So because I was a guarantor and I had some issues with my person that I signed for. Love them to death, but it was what it was. And they had to pay everything to come off to get me off of it. And
Everything.
every
Mhm.
single thing they had to pay. Another way is to have somebody else sign for you, right, Audrey? Have
Right. So
someone else sign for you just to be on the safe side. Don't sign, just get somebody else to sign it for you.
yes. So if you get somebody else, if you are a guarantor, it's best for you to get somebody that you know will sign for you and not the person who took the loan to be shopping around for a guarantor. Get somebody, get them on to sign and get your letter right away, because sometimes it's just hard for people to find people to guarantor for them. So if you can find somebody, get somebody. If not, like one of our people had to do, she couldn't even find the person that took the loan. She had to pay off the whole $1 million.
And if you don't pay it, it's not like you can hide anywhere.
No,
You have to go home.
you
I know of a case where someone else, a client of mine, had an issue where they were paying it now, but they paid it late, like a month late or a week late or something like that. And it was still late because once they give you June 30th to leave, you have to leave by that date. And if everything
Right.
is not taken care of by that date and you have your waiver in hand by that date, you have to leave the country.
You have
Otherwise, you're out of status. And then we'll talk about what can happen, Audrey, another time, not today. We'll talk about what can happen if you come out of status, and then what are the different avenues of getting the waiver and other things, right?
Right.
So we'll have another day to discuss the other. And I see the questions come in, but we will compile them and put them in the WhatsApp group. If you're a part of you should be a part of the WhatsApp group if you have this link. So we will definitely share those. Final words from
contact
Audrey.
and Rochelle.
Thank you.
all right. So to wrap up,
Consultation or anything.
no,
Final
I want to
words.
thank you for your time and attention, of course. But before I go, I do have a special offer for you. I know most of you might be wondering about cost. Regularly when we process J1 waivers, our fees, our consultant fees are like $1,750 to $2,750. We do require 50% down payment and the balance cleared within 3 months. So we do have a special offer for you. It's $50 for our consultation. Generally, for any immigration processes, it's $97 for our consultation. So anything that you would want to talk to me about, it's definitely $97. You would book on my calendar, and then, of course, we would take it from there. It's 45 minutes for your consultation, and we do it virtually. Now for you, I do have an offer of $50. We do require $250 for form fees and mailing. We only do express mailing. We don't do anything that will cause a delay or a potential of your mail getting lost. So we only do express mail overnight. Consultant fees, $1,250. We do require a deposit of $500 and $150 twice per month. Now, an even better offer. Now, if you should book today to have your entire J1 waiver process completed, it's $1,000. And by scanning the QR code, you will pay a non-refundable deposit of $100. This offer is only for today. And of course, your regular consultations only for this group is at Calendly/Midas Consular Services/J1 waivers. Anything outside of that, I do have a website. I do have, of course, you can find me on any social media platform, Midas Immigration Services. And of course, we do have a consultation fee of $97. Please keep this link. It's yours to keep, especially because you came and you shared with us tonight. So save this link. And again, I'm just going to say thank you again for your time and attention. I'm going to go right back to the top of the slide where my contact information is. So
Thank you everyone for joining. Thank you, Audrey, for please, you can turn it down a little bit. Thank you for sharing with us and taking the time to just go through all this process with us. If you have questions, I'm going to open the group tomorrow for questions. If you want to get the contact information in case you don't get it today, the contact information for Audrey, I'll post it in the group. I also do waiver consultation as well. So if you want help as to when is the best time to do it, which month and all of that. And I also provide guidance and support through the process, or a checklist of the documents that you need, things like that. Because I do have a company as well, Transit USA, and that's where we're operating from for these sessions. So thank you guys for joining. Again, the group will be open. The group will be open tomorrow for any questions, or if you need to get to Audrey for consultation or myself for consultation or anything like that. Thank you guys.
thanks everyone, and thanks for having me.